The words of that hymn are really rather spectacular, aren't they? Dear Lord and Father of mankind, when you take time just to really focus and meditate upon them. There's some more words now from the Bible, from Micah chapter 4 and verses 1 to 4. The prophecy of part of the prophecy of the prophet Micah. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised up above the hills. People shall stream to it, and many nations shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between many peoples, and shall arbitrate between strong nations far away. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But they shall all sit under their own vines, and under their own fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken. What a wonderful promise that is, that one day all nations shall come to God. One day all nations shall beat their swords into plowshares. One day all nations shall know peace and learn peace and practice peace. And they shall sit under their own vines. Now, if you know anything about growing grapes, you'll know that it takes a long time for a vine, from when it's first planted, to produce its first crop. So the whole idea of sitting under your own vine is a picture of security, a picture of peace, that you have all that time without being your land being destroyed, without your lives being put at threat. And to sit under your own vine means you've been there a while, and you're going to be there a lot longer. So, having read those verses from Micah, I want to go back to last year, to something I heard on the radio, because when asked about Remembrance Sunday, one person answered, "It's boring." How easy it is to criticise something without really thinking. Do you like maths? No, it's boring. How about English? No, boring. Will you empty the dishwasher? Tidy your room? Do I have to? It's boring. We don't like to do, or want to do even, boring stuff, do we? After all, the world seems designed to stop us from being bored. Watching TV, if you're bored, zap, and the station has changed and you've got a brand new programme to watch, all in an instant. We all know that going on long car journeys, it can be quite boring. But if you've got your tablet with you, or your phone, unless you're driving, of course, you can play on all kinds of games. You can watch videos, you can watch films, goodness me. You can do anything pretty much to stop you getting bored. Compared with Xboxes and PlayStations, iPads and social media, real life sometimes, and virtual reality of course, real life does sometimes seem to be pretty boring. Like day-to-day mundane tasks, those mundane tasks of making food and washing up and making beds and cleaning. Oh my word, it can be so dull, so dull. But what we do on Remembrance Sunday, although sadly not this year, joining in processions and gathering around the cenotaph, is the real world. Not a virtual reality, it's the real world where things happen in real time. It's not a virtual or make-believe world on some screen or other. And it's really important. Even though we all know that the most important part of the Remembrance Sunday service is 2 minutes of silence. What could be more boring than that? For 2 whole minutes we stand still. Now just imagine if your computer didn't work for 2 minutes. It would seem like an eternity. But for 2 minutes we stand still. And nothing happens. No mobiles, hopefully. No turning around to see if anyone's looking. No scratching because the back of your head is itching. I bet some of you have just scratched the back of your head as well. And we stand still and we remember and there is absolutely nothing to entertain us. The fact that we do stand in silence, and the evidence that you are listening to this, proves that for you, and I guess for me, Remembrance Sunday is significant enough to drag us away from a Sunday morning lie-in, flicking idly through screens or through the Sunday papers, or following celebrities on Twitter. Because some things in life are too important to be dismissed as boring. On Remembrance Sunday and on Armistice Day, we remember with people who have experienced war and who proudly wear their medals. People who have learned the hard way that being bored is certainly not the last word. They know that some things are so important that you do them no matter how tedious they may seem. And those who know about these things say that for most people, war is 95% boredom and 5% the most terrifying thing you will ever experience in your whole life. Every military commander knows that they must always be ready to fight, but the real battle is often to keep boredom at bay. A sentry must be vigilant, even if there doesn't seem to be anything to look at. The ship's lookout must look, even if there's nothing to see. The equipment must be ready. It must be checked every day, even if it's not being used. The plans must be in place. The preparations must be made, even if they are not ultimately needed. Before any battle, there are years of training and practice. Just compare for a moment the life of a top athlete. The race might be over in a few seconds, if you're Usain Bolt. But behind those few seconds, there are years of training, years of boring stuff. Getting up early, straining every muscle, resting, eating the right things, not partying all night. A really strict and boring regime, focused on one brief moment. But the boring stuff is vital. If the athlete doesn't do the boring stuff, the athlete doesn't stand a chance. So, 2 minutes silence, no distractions, and real concentration. And we do it to remember. And that's hard because when we remember those who died in war, we are faced with the most terrible evil. The deaths of service personnel and of civilians are part of the terrible and evil cost of war. And we still haven't learned to avoid it yet. War still rages across the globe. We haven't, on the whole, beaten our swords into ploughshares or our spears into pruning hooks, or to be more up to date, chieftain tanks into bicycles or wind turbines, and machine guns into sculptures and furniture. Although thankfully, and this point has been made, in the United States and Africa there are people doing just that. If you look at the website Turning Weapons of War into Works of Art, and do check it out, Turning Weapons of War into Works of Art, that's a website that features a man called Gonçalo Mabunda from Mozambique, who moulds, solders and welds deactivated AK-47s, landmines, tanks and other armoury left over from his country's 16-year civil war. And he makes them into chairs, thrones, masks and statues. And he might even throw a soldier's old helmet or boot into the mix. Since 1995, the Christian Council of Mozambique, a body of local churches, has been scouring the country and collecting weapons from individuals and communities. Some pieces are destroyed, while others are deactivated and given to men and women, like Mabunda, to sculpt into art. Also objects that you can actually use, like chairs and things. And crucially, they're never given to the army or to the police. Some 800,000 weapons have been collected since the council launched its programme called Transforming Guns into Hoes. The name is inspired, of course, by our Bible verse from the book of Micah. They will hammer their swords into ploughshares and their spears into pruning hooks. What an example these people are to us all. Back to the 2 minute silence. When we remember, We say sorry to God for the conflicts that have brought about so many deaths, for the evil that so many have lived through and fought through. So if during the silence, when you do the 2-minute silence, so if during that silence you find it difficult, like when you observe the 2-minute silence, that's the word I was struggling for, when you find it difficult to concentrate, perhaps there's one thought to help us, to remember in the right way. And it's a line from the Lord's Prayer. Each time you remember or think of something about war and those who lost their lives, ask God, pray to God, deliver us from evil. When we say in our minds, deliver us from evil, we are remembering that God is not blaming us or wanting to punish us, because after all, Jesus came to forgive. And this is not just to take away the painful memories and to pretend that they didn't happen. It's not to distract us or even to teach us. Because to forgive is to heal and to restore and to bring us back into a loving relationship with our God. And we remember that Jesus, like so many who died in war, gave his life. And when he died for us on the cross, to prove that we are loved and forgiven by our Father. So as we remember, let us pray that all nations will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and that God may indeed deliver us from evil. Amen. Two possible hymns now. The first is Mission Praise 806, Beauty for Brokenness, and it's a wonderful version of this on the website. The link's there, and do have a look at that, because it is very powerful, some wonderful, powerful images to help us in our prayers. And then there's a beautiful new hymn that I came across a couple of years ago, called When the Guns of War Fell Silent. Do spend some time with that one too, and really again focus on the words. So Beauty for Brokenness and or When the Guns of War Fell Silent. Let's hope for that day.